I spent most of my wedding day looking at the door, not constantly, not enough for people to notice, just enough that I remember it now. The ceremony venue wasn't large. Anyone walking in would have been impossible to miss. Every time the doors opened, some part of me expected to see my parents rushing inside, apologizing for traffic or a flat tire or some unexpected emergency. By the time the ceremony started, I was still telling myself there had to be a reason. By the time it ended, I had run out of reasons. My wife squeezed my hand during the reception. "Do you want to call them?" I looked around at smiling guests, half-finished drinks, and the decorations we'd spent months planning. "No," I said, "but I did the next morning." My mother answered on the second ring. Her voice sounded normal, too normal. "Why weren't you there?" I asked. There was a brief silence. Then she said, "Yesterday was your sister's birthday." At first, I thought I had misunderstood. "What?" "We couldn't miss her party." That was the explanation. Not an emergency, not illness, not an accident, a birthday party. I remember standing in my kitchen staring out the window while she continued talking. Something about family obligations. Something about how my sister had already invited people. Something about how she'd been looking forward to it for weeks. The details barely registered, because suddenly dozens of old memories were standing in the room with me. My high school graduation, my college acceptance, my first promotion. Every achievement had somehow become secondary whenever my sister wanted attention. For years I had explained it away. She was younger. She needed more support. She was going through something difficult. There was always a reason. But standing there after my wedding, I realized something uncomfortable. The reasons changed. The result never did. A week later, I canceled the automatic transfers. No speeches, no threats, no family meeting, just a few clicks. For nearly 6 years, I had quietly helped my parents financially. It started after my father's retirement, then came unexpected expenses, then home repairs, then monthly support. Over time, it became normal, expected, almost invisible. Nobody talked about it much because nobody had to. The money simply appeared. For the first month, nobody mentioned it. The second month, my mother texted. "Did something happen with the transfer?" I replied. "Yes." I stopped it. Her response came immediately. "What do you mean?" I stared at the screen for several minutes before typing. "I can't do it anymore." That wasn't entirely true. I could. I just wasn't going to. The calls started after that. Some angry, some guilt-filled, some pretending not to be about money at all. My sister eventually called too. That conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. She spent most of it explaining why I was overreacting. I listened, then I wished her well and ended the call. Months passed. For the first time in years, I wasn't managing someone else's emergencies. The strange thing was that I expected to feel powerful. Instead, I felt sad. There is a difference between setting a boundary and enjoying it. People often confuse the two. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I was simply refusing to continue participating in a system that hurt me. Then came the situation nobody expected. My parents had accumulated more debt than I realized. Nothing criminal, nothing dramatic, just years of borrowing, refinancing, and assuming future help would cover present decisions. When lenders started asking harder questions, the situation became impossible to ignore. My father called me repeatedly. I didn't answer, then he left a voicemail. "We need you at a meeting." Not a request, an assumption, the same assumption that had existed for years. I almost didn't go, but curiosity won. The meeting took place inside a financial services office, a small conference room, a stack of paperwork, a representative reviewing obligations and repayment options. I sat quietly while numbers were discussed. Several times, my parents spoke as if my future involvement was guaranteed. "When our son helps, he usually handles, we'll work something out together." The representative nodded politely. Then eventually she turned toward me. It was such an ordinary moment. Yet it changed everything. "Will you be participating financially going forward?" she asked. The room became very quiet. My mother looked at me. My father looked at me. For a second, I felt 12 years old again, desperate for approval, desperate not to disappoint anyone. Then I remembered standing at my wedding venue watching an empty doorway. I remembered years of being valued most when I was useful, so I answered. No, nobody gasped. Nobody shouted. The ceiling didn't collapse. The representative simply nodded and made a note. Understood. Then she continued explaining available options based solely on my parents' resources. That was it, a single word, a single note on a form, yet it felt like watching a contract disappear. Not a legal contract, an emotional one, the unwritten agreement that I would always absorb the consequences. For the first time, an authority figure had removed all ambiguity. Nobody could pretend anymore. Nobody could assume anymore. The responsibility belonged exactly where it belonged. The drive home was harder than I expected. I kept waiting for relief. Instead, I felt grief, because boundaries don't just separate you from pain. Sometimes they separate you from hope, the hope that people will finally become who you needed them to be. My parents and I still speak occasionally. The conversations are shorter now, more careful. My sister and I remain distant, not hostile, just distant. Some relationships survive disappointment. Others survive only after being reduced to their actual size. I don't know whether my parents understand what they lost. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. What I know is this. For years, I thought love meant showing up no matter how many times someone failed to show up for you. I don't believe that anymore. The day my parents skipped my wedding wasn't the day our relationship broke. It was simply the day I stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. And oddly enough, accepting that truth gave me something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not revenge, not victory, just peace, quiet, imperfect, and long overdue.